today we have someone who is rather legendary in Los Angeles, rather legendary in his ability to not only be prolific in his composition and his output musically, but also contributing to the fabric of the culture of Los Angeles. He has served for the past 2 decades as a beacon of culture at DUBLAB. He is part of Languis. He is part of Pharaohs. He has recently just put out his first solo record, which is kind of hard to believe, called Chamber of Tears on Geographic North Records. And more recently has been named as the music director of KCRW, the another beacon of culture here. We have Alejandro Cohen.
Hello, Stephen. How are you?
Hi.
Thank
Hi.
you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me. I know the past few weeks have been probably pretty hectic for you. So there is a lot to discuss and a lot to unpack. I think that I had first been exposed to your work and to your art through Languis, big Languis fan from way back. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, your journey as a creative from the point that you started to create until the time that you have kind of gone into the building of culture
Yeah.
has been pretty amazing. And I wonder if you could just share a little bit just about your own personal journey from creator to where you are today, in the culture.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I came to Los Angeles in 1996 a bit by accident. I ended up in the city. Wasn't with the purpose of the LA is a city that many can use for advanced careers, or with an end goal of something along the lines of making it or something like that, right? That you hear often. That wasn't my case. I came here as sort of like after high school, save a bit of money. The idea was to travel, be here for a bit, maybe go somewhere else, and I never left. So that's kind of the beginning of that journey. I did come with some demo tapes of recordings I made with my friend Marcos, who eventually the two of us created Languis in Los Angeles. I know often Languis is referred as via Buenos Aires, but actually it was a creation, a band that was created here in LA about a few months after we arrived. And then from there, Languis became kind of part of DUBLAB in a way. When DUBLAB started, they welcomed our music. They had us perform at the station. I got involved with DUBLAB little by little as more like a volunteer basis, helping in the more events and just kind of lending a hand at things, eventually DJing there, sharing records. So the transition from one to the other, from becoming, from going from being a musician to, I guess if you want to call it, cultural practitioner, right? Kind of blended little by little. It was a kind of a crossfade than a cut, that was decided. It was just from being in a band to you're rolling cables to putting things to one day you're doing it before DUBLAB, and then you're doing this, and then one day this is needed, and then you have an idea and you tell DUBLAB. I remember going up to Mark when I started the Tonalism series in 2006. I went up to Mike and said, "Hey, should I put this under the DUBLAB name? Could I just to help promote it?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And so it was really this blend that I cannot really tell you when was when one ended and the other one started, or when it transitioned. It was very gradual. And I, funny enough, I never really saw them as different things. I know they are, right? Being a musician and being on the other side and running a media organization. But I think that's what made my position quite unique, that I just saw it all as part of one, just trying to lend a hand in doing things that I was interested in.
It's really interesting that you should mention that, you looking at it as one thing, because there's so many, I tend to be kind of sequestered off into my own little corner of the internet, kind of doing my thing, and then I'll pop out every few years and like work with people to kind of, work on different projects or what have you. But I think I've always kind of felt there's this drive, especially as independent musicians that don't necessarily have the backing of larger media organizations or groups, or even self-funded bands that tend to quote unquote make it in different levels, that you kind of have to put in the work to do that. And it seems like that transition from being in a band to being an independent musician, and to just coming here from Argentina to kind of plant your flag in the cultural landscape that is Los Angeles. Um, it's just a very natural extension of that. And I think, I'm curious, as you started to move into um, the media organization side of things, I mean, DubLab has been such a wonderful thing for so many people in this city, and it's provided a platform for so many people to amplify their own work. And I'm curious, where did you see yourself as a creator? And by the way, to talk a little bit about Chamber of Tears, what a fantastic record! I was shocked that it was your first solo record for some reason. I was really like, really? That doesn't
No,
seem.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the first, just thank you for Chamber of Tears. Yes, I know. Funny enough, I've been doing music under different names, different bands, collaborations, and when this record came about, I was originally used my other project called Cafe Ale, which is a little more electronic stuff. And then it really felt personal, and I spoke to Geographic North, and they said, it does feel more like your own thing. There's no it's just was very straight from my own kind of sensibility. So it felt more appropriate. And that's what it became. I realized, well, I guess this is my first actual solo record under my name, which is a thing. Once you put it there, you're like, wow, my name is in there. It's a thing. But no, to answer to your question, I just never really analyzed it much, what doing what I did with DubLab, doing what I did with Pharaohs, Languis, you just move and move and move, and you just don't stop. And I think um, it kind of serves you well not having to stop to analyze it, because then you just do it, and then you look back and you're like, oh, there's all this body of work, and I guess it could be uh, it could be yeah, put under this umbrella, or could be doing this, doing that. But it really keeps you fresh in not having to analyze things. You just keep moving, you just keep doing things. It does, after a while, you do also have to acknowledge what you've done, and because otherwise it feels almost kind of silly to not do. You have to understand, well, you have contributed something. But I really just try to not think much about it more, other than, well, everything is just another opportunity to keep doing my thing, things that I love, things that I believe. To me, serving my own music is, I find as much pleasure or fulfillment as serving other people's work. I just really like it. I really enjoy the opportunity of helping other musicians, or creating a platform in any way I can. I really find genuine enjoyment in doing so. So again, you just become, everything you do, from accounting to to writing grants, to even keeping the studios, building studios that we live on now, that all becomes part of your artwork in a way. So you just have to understand it as that, like everything you're doing, from the admin to the creative, is all part of your art.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point, and I've seen, over the years, I've been in Los Angeles for this will be my 15th year of living in Los Angeles, and even prior to that, when I was in the Bay Area, living in the Bay Area, and there was Beta Lab, and there were little pockets of people trying to do this online, media online presence of really underground music, and music that wasn't really exposed in the same ways that most pop culture is out there. And DubLab was one of the first organizations on the scene to kind of plant their flag in that and really evolve over time. And to see where you are now, to see this beautiful studio that you're in, to see that you have your financial sea legs there. 25 years is quite a milestone, and I know that DubLab just celebrated that 25-year anniversary recently. You've been there since the very beginning, haven't you?
Pretty much, yes. I mean, I'm not one of the founders of DubLab. That was Mark McNeil, Frosty,
Frosty.
and John Buck, who was the other co-founder. But I was part of the community that was part of the beginning of DUBLAB. So yes, I was there from sort of like the very beginning. Maybe I arrived to the studios like 2 weeks later or something like that. But yes, I was involved from the beginning.
And
I remember there was this spirit again of uh, trying to define, but also not trying to define what DUBLAB was. LA was kind of left alone back then, culturally speaking, or what the scene was in Los Angeles felt like was its own thing that no one was watching, which always gives you a lot of freedom. And I'm saying nobody's watching in comparison to what at the time was maybe New York, or even Chicago back then was also kind of a lot going on there. London, Berlin, all those, cities. And the West Coast was kind of a bit left alone, in some sort. So it did feel that it was a bit of a playground that you could just, do things and not having to answer to anyone, which gave DUBLAB a lot of freedom. Even the idea at the beginning, we even having to explain what internet radio was, right? It was a bit of the wild west of media, and like you said, yeah, there was a Beta Lounge, was a good friends of ours. I remember playing there in San Francisco, and it was a moment that it really was an opening to define something that wasn't defined yet. You see the influence of DUBLAB. You see that kind of style of online radio now reflected in other organizations, and I'm happy to see that, or to think that maybe we had a part in that, even if they may not directly been influenced by DUBLAB. I think we had a role in creating that style of what is today known as online radio.
Oh, I would say without a shadow of a doubt that DubLab had a huge influence on the direction of things. I mean, there's something about sort of being one of the first to do that and being a pioneer in the space to be able to do that. And I'm just curious. I mean, now that you are coming to the end of almost a quarter of a century of engagement with this organization, and coming to the end of this particular chapter of your career, what are some of the milestones when you look back at your time at DubLab in your various capacity, and up to being executive director to where you are today? Would you tell me a little bit about some of the big milestones that you've experienced there, that you were kind of witness to while you've been at DubLab?
Yes. Well, I remember when DubLab first started, was part of the kind of the first .com bubble, right? That was existing, and DubLab started in a way, in a kind of very official capacity of funding, and it was what it's going to be, right? A radio station, But then soon after, when that bubble popped about a year and a half or so later, it really became what really was at heart, which is a collective, right? And a very hand to mouth collective of bunch of a monthly crew of people, and we would do gigs and kind of split the money from those gigs and put money into the station and make it work with what we had. And then I remember when I joined DUBLAB in a full-time capacity, that was when DUBLAB was having enough financial momentum that we felt like we could turn this into something, in a way, go back to the idea of the beginning, being an actual organization. And for us, getting the 501c3 status was a big milestone, because the 501c3 status not only gave you a legal structure to operate under, but also it really defined the spirit of the organization. I know there's a lot of organizations out there that claim to be a community organization, or support the community, and the intentions may be good, but to me, it's very important that it's on paper too. By being a 501c3 organization, you are owned by the public. You respond to the public. This is not a brand that can be sold after or turn around. Everyone here at DUBLAB walks away with their last paycheck, and that's it. You pass it to the next people, just as I'm doing now. So to me, getting the 501c3 status was a big milestone, because it really define our true mission, our true commitment to the community. From there, I mean, I can give you a few moments that also felt important. Getting our first grant with the city of Los Angeles was really cool. That meant like, wow, it's official. Someone, the Department of Cultural Affairs, gave us our first grant, or LA County Arts and Culture, from LA County also gave us the grant. It was about the two of them around the same time. That was a big a moment that you could mark it as something representative of our evolution. I remember when DUBLAB, when Mark left as director, it was when DUBLAB was also hosting its first, that was 2015. So we were celebrating 16 years at the time. And then we were doing it at the Music Center and at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. And I was working with Ming at the time. She was the vice president of the Music Center. And we're setting up inside. We're throwing this party called Sleepless. That was part of our celebration. And, busy. And Ming takes me outside to the courtyard, to the plaza of the Music Center. And I turn around. They projected the DUBLAB logo on the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. And to me, that was a moment of feeling like, oh, wow, we're just... we're really part of the cultural life of Los Angeles, just to see the DUBLAB logo projected at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion at the Music Center. That was also significant. So those are the moments that really represent kind of an evolution of the organization from a collective to something a little more formal to something a little more established and so forth. And then, maybe every anniversary party we do is a big milestone too, because it's like, it marks a year, it's a fundraiser for the organization. Yeah, those are some of the examples that come to mind right away.
Well, I mean, there's so much to unpack just in what you said right there. And I know, there's these two tracks for you as somebody who's on the organizational side, who's on the administrative side, who helps facilitate all of these things for different artists, and who is, basically there to support all of the different and innovative programming, from the things that you guys do in the airport to the all-night events. I mean, you guys do some really interesting programming there, and it's not just like, oh, we're going to emulate terrestrial radio, and it's going to be kind of an extension of that. It's really something unique and creative and really engaging at that level. And you can kind of tell that the people that are doing the organizing of the day-to-day operations are still using their creative input, because I feel like a lot, if not everyone that's there on the organizational side, also they serve they have their own personal art practice, for lack of a better term. Either they're musicians or visual artists in some way. And I'm curious, looking at this through the lens of your own show, through elevation, through sound, and your own programming and your own development as an artist, that's got to be very intertwined in that experience for you as well. I mean, I'm sure you bring a lot of that sensibility and thinking to the table when you're working on these things.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's all part of the same in a way, and one feeds the other always. Also, I'm something that served me well. It's almost counterintuitive, that not having a particular interest in promoting my own things. So I didn't. None of the things I've done at DUBLAB were with the purpose of ultimately pushing anything particularly mine. And you can probably see that I'm not. Sometimes I almost push it to the back, kind of, oh yeah, that's my thing that I do. But also that serves you well when you are helping other artists. We're working on supporting other musicians. Nothing informs you better than working on your own stuff, and it really gives you a lot of agency when you are also yourself a musician, when you're also yourself, not in my case, but other people at DUBLAB, a visual artist, a director, or whatever it is that you do, gives you more power in serving others, I believe.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I've always, if I hadn't known that you had done all of this work, all of this music prior to your engagement at DUBLAB on the organizational side, I don't think I would have known it, because you're not like, also I'm dropping my, there was nothing really self-serving about what you did there. And first of all, it really falls in line with the mission of what you have there at DUBLAB and what you've done. And I also feel like that cross. I'm very curious about how different disciplines and different ways of operating creatively impact, how you perform, not just organizationally, but as an artist as well. And if we can, switch gears to kind of your own personal journey as a musician, how you know, not to put a firewall there, but obviously they're two different things, right? There's the music that you do, and then there's the work that you do at DUBLAB. I'm just curious to, over the years as a musician, you know, that process for you, what does that look like in engaging with the community that's been in and around DubLab?
Uh, as a musician, how I engage with the public. Um, I mean, it's been always kind of more awkward than, to me, it's harder to engage with the public through my own music than it is with Tabla. With Tabla, it seems like to me it comes pretty natural. With my own music, but just myself as a musician, especially solo, I find it a bit awkward. I just really kind of it's funny. It's there's two sides to it. I feel like with Dublab, I know exactly what needs to be done for things, right? For projects, how to promote it, what the strategies. And when it comes to my own music, I freeze. I lose all sort of like confidence, any sort of like knowledge. I just be like, put it out, and it's almost too close to home to deal with it. So I just don't, to be honest. I don't a lot. I put it out there and just hope that the world will pick it up, but I just don't engage much.
Well, at the end of the day, as a creative, as somebody who's is a maker, as somebody who's a musician, that is highly personal, right? And your music has always been, in my estimation, has always been emotive. It's always been something that I feel, it really touches something, right? It's a very emotive sound to me, and I can imagine that when you're in dublab mode, when you're in organizational mode, when you're in when you're putting things together, it's one thing. You have a very clear task, but I'd like to dig a little deeper into, I guess, your creative process. So you're sitting down, you're starting to write material. How does that process evolve for you, like now?
Yeah. Well, in the case of, I mean, each project has its own moment, right? In the case of Chamber of Tears, I've been writing these guitar pieces for a while. I'm originally a guitar player. That's where I come from. I used to play classical when I was a teenager, and over the years, that has never really left me. The techniques or the way of playing, and so I've been writing these little pieces over time, and this one was one of those moments where I had to drop every pretension of being with anything that was being done, and I try record these songs with a click track, trying to make them layer them with instruments or with synthesizers, things like that, and nothing was gelling until I had to accept every one of my weaknesses as a musician and use them in my favor, in that sense, meaning that even my sense of tempo, I tend to not be the tightest in tempo, and I just went and embraced it. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to play them as they are, and what can be so offensive about the natural tempo of my body, right? The natural rhythm. So when you hear the songs, they do fluctuate, and I'm like, well, let that be what it is. So in this case, it was very, very, it was coming from a very personal place. In the case of other records I've done, with Pharaohs, for example, it's more collaborative. It's just something that you go back and forth with the people that you're working with. There was a moment that I was really kind of going back to dance and dance music. I'm talking like the mid 2000s. And Pharaohs really kind of developed out of that, back that obsession back to 90s house and dance culture, and also even going back to more kind of the Balearic sounds of the 80s and things like that.
Back to the creation of your own music, I feel like you've always kind of there's this through line of like organic and digital, or organic sounds and more electronic sounds that kind of interplay incredibly well. Like some of the earlier material, and like I said, when the Langus stuff that I heard very early on was just immediately captivating to me, and I'm very curious, from that end. A lot of the work that you've done has been collaborative over the years. A lot you've released your own material as a solo project, but do you have a preference in terms of how you work? Do you prefer to collaborate, or do you prefer to sit on your own and create things?
It has changed over the years. I used to be more into collaboration with people in bands, in duos, and kind of those situations. I think over time I've been enjoying more my time in the studio by myself. in working music, doing things in my own time, and just be unapologetically uncompromising in what I wanted to do. And the period of meeting with people on, every Tuesdays and Thursdays, at night, at least for the time being, they're sort of over for me. At the moment, I quite enjoy working on my own. I think part of it is because also everything else I do is so collaborative at DUBLAB, that music has more and more become the little corner in the world where I can just explore whatever I want and do it and shape it in whichever way I want. I feel that that's my safest place at the moment.
Well, I
Yeah.
do have to say, selfishly, especially having just done a deep listen on Chamber of Tears, I selfishly would love to hear you do more of your solo work, because it's just
Yep.
I love all the work that you've done in every iteration, every band format, everything that you've done. I'm a big fan of the work. And by the way, just as a side note, it's such a refreshing and fun thing to know that if you're a fan of somebody's work and they're doing something like involvement in DubLab, because I remember the first conversation I had, I never made the connection. I'm like, oh my God, I've got your, I just had this moment of like, wow, I'm a big fan. Glad you're doing this too. But as a again, selfishly, love your solo work. And there's just let's be honest, you don't get involved in becoming a music director of a station like KCRW or the executive director of DubLab and have a lot of free time to do projects, right?
Part of that too. Yeah, there's a lot of sacrifice that comes with that. Where the thing that really keeps my music going is that I take it as it's almost like going to the gym. Is the last thing you want to do at the end of the day, but you just force yourself to just go and do it, and you just put it. You just put the time every week from this hour to this hour. Sometimes you just sit there and waste time, and sometimes you make a bit of progress, and then you look back and like, oh, I have this body of work after a year or a year and a half. So it does take a lot of discipline, and you really have to push yourself into your studio to do it. Otherwise it doesn't come out naturally.
Well, and as a creative too, I feel like it's one of those things. I want to come back to what you said earlier about the discipline component of that. I was just reading through something yesterday. It was the Chuck Close had this quote about, if you wait for inspiration to strike, you're going to look back at your life and not have a very great body of work, right? Like, inspiration is really about like just showing up, putting in the work, try not to be too tied to the outcome, and then sometimes it's going to be great, sometimes it's not, but whatever the case is, it's like, again, the analogy of it being like going to the gym is great. Um and I think that, again, you're to be able to do all of these things simultaneously, to be able to maintain your position at DubLab as the executive director, um, for the time that you have, to be able to put in the production work on this album, to be able to have any type of a personal life outside of that, it must be astonishingly difficult. But having that discipline to do it, again, to look back at the 25 years of DubLab, to look at your body of work, to look at your discography, that's a really, really solid body of work that has all maintained a certain level of quality over that time. And I think it's just part and parcel of your own process and how you've gone through that. And to shift gears a little bit, back to the administrative side of your house, as it were, can we talk a little bit about your coming into KCRW, because that is, wow, like when that is such a big and iconic role. Not that you didn't already have that big and iconic role at DubLab. To go from one position to the next must be pretty incredible. I mean, it must be great. But can you talk to me a little bit about how that evolution occurred?
Well, I mean, there was a me leaving DubLab started about the plans to leave DubLab was about a year ago. It had nothing to do with KCRW. It was about a year ago. I saw DubLab about to reach its 25-year anniversary, which just happened just over a week ago. And then in seeing my involvement with DubLab for 25 years, 18 years full time as an employee, and 10 years as director of the organization, it really felt like the numbers were there, right? Like, it felt like, okay, this is a good time to to close it, not close the organization, close my role. And also, not only that we were turning 25, that was 10 years as director, but also um, where the station was at felt also like it was at a new moment, where we just finished a year ago our new studios. We built new studios in near USC in University Park. And then also financially, the organization is at a place that can also weather a transition, right? In other words, I think it was just, we were just at a good place. We're like, okay, this is it. I think also from what I observed in other organizations, I think when the director is there for too long, things can get stagnant. Bringing change is necessary. uh, DUBLAB has a new generation of people that are much younger than me, that are doing great work, and it really felt like I wanted to give them the space to take it over and do things their own way. It's not going to be better, it's not going to be worse, it's just going to be different. And it really felt like it was the moment of to continue the natural evolution of the organization. So that's what my departure comes from, really from a very calculated moment that started about a year ago. And that was both necessary, I think, also for me, for my own personal journey, but also good for the organization. From there, the opening for the music director at KCRW was public, and just I applied, and I don't. There's not much more to share than that. I met with them. I really enjoy what the goals are, and what they liked in me and what they want to see for me to do at the organization. And I felt like we really saw eye to eye. And for them, I always look up to them. KCRW has always been a bit of the big sister station, big brother station that we looked up to. And it just felt very natural, especially after meeting with the people there and seeing where they were at. But that said, they really both were completely unrelated, and the timing was purely coincidental.
I always felt like that DubLab and KCRW were absolutely at a minimum kindred spirits, but I know that also over the years they've shared different, different types of threads that have gone through different iterations of folks that are either in and out as DJs or in and out as talent. There's a very close relationship between the two organizations, and I remember even prior to ever coming here that KCRW and in particular Morning Becomes Eclectic has been something that's been an outlet for a lot of new music. There's a lot of independent programming there, and it seems like there's a very natural extension of what you've been doing at DubLab and what you will be doing at KCRW. I'm just curious to speak to DubLab and sort of what is in the next phases for DubLab, because to see where DubLab started and to see how prolific it's become. I mean, I can't even begin to name off all the accolades, that have been part of the history of that. What is the next phase for DubLab, and have you as an organization have that new leadership in place to come in and take those next steps in that executive director position?
Yes. Well, I think where we're at as an organization now, transition period and building new leadership, DevLab is looking to be a little more intentional on the type of leader it wants to bring. And by that, I mean that, the founder, Mark McNeil, obviously as the founder, there's no intention of looking for for a leader. It came naturally by creating DevLab. When I joined as director, I was already general manager for DevLab for a good number of years. And Mark went back to school, and then it was a matter of like, Ale, do you want to take over this? I said, yeah, sure, I'll take over. And I took over the roles of director, but it wasn't a calculated moment. But DUBLAB was much smaller back then, so it didn't feel the need. Now that DUBLAB is a bigger organization, now that the last one of the original crew is leaving the station, at least in an administrative capacity, it really feels that it's an opportunity to be a little more intentional in what it looks. So in the search, there's going to be probably about a 3 to 6 month search of an executive director, and then a redefinition of the roles of all the employees, how they get involved, because the times are different, the demands are different, the expectations that employees at the organization have are different from back in the day. Partly because the city has changed. LA is a
Right.
city that is more expensive as a city, and therefore um, things have to be a little more, can be as casual than when rent is cheap. Really, that makes a big difference, and therefore everything has to be a little more intentional and thought out. But that's not a bad thing. It's just different. It's just the ways, the times we live in. And but again, I'm confident that the organization will be fine, because also the people that currently work at DUBLAB are great. You have Rachel, you have Tate, you have Melody, you have Eli, you have Megan. All of them are doing great work, here at the station. So I think we're in good hands. I wouldn't be leaving if I didn't know that we were in good hands.
No, absolutely, and again, from an outsider's perspective, to see where it's been and to where it is now, it's really astonishing that essentially what started as just like, we're going to just try this internet radio thing and see what happens, and to see how established it has become over the years has been really, really fantastic to watch. And really, there's a lot of gratitude on my side, because it's to have something like this as part of the cultural landscape of Los Angeles has been amazing. So personally, thank you for being a part of that. That's been amazing. And you said you're going through this 3 to 6 month process as you're looking at leadership, and as you kind of are shuffling the deck, as it were. When is your official transition going from DUBLAB into KCRW?
Well, my last day at DUBLAB is this Friday, October 11th. So yeah, so you're catching
Wow.
me right as I start my last week here at the station. Is
Oh my goodness.
much about it's a little bit emotional. No, it's like, no, but it's a good time. It's but this is my last week, and then so I'm just closing the last bits and ends of everything, and then I start KCRW October 28th, and take 2 weeks off. Get some stuff done, get my new prescriptions. You know, I
Sleep
don't
a
know,
little bit, maybe.
a little bit. Get my car washed, do all the things I don't have time to do. Nothing too exciting.
uh, well, wow. First of all, thank you. I thank you for the run at DUBLAB, because that's amazing. Looking forward to your new role at KCRW. By the way, the masquerade party at KCRW is like one of my favorite things too. So you're getting on board just in time for the Halloween masquerade party at KCRW. What do you have anything in the works that you can talk about that you're going to be doing at KCRW? Is there anything in particular that you're going to be engaging with, or anything you can talk about in terms of your new role at KCRW?
Well, for now, until I start, I just don't want to say anything on behalf of that role yet. Until I'm my official capacity. I'm just excited to continue in the work I do, and do my thing. Which is the answer I would be giving if I were still here at DUBLAB. It's that's all. But once I start there, I think I'll be in a better place to start. Coming up with the ideas and sharing more.
Okay, excellent. And are you going to maintain your slot at DUBLAB through on the Elevation Through Sound show?
That's something also that is I'm reviewing all that. I'm learning, and seeing what my capacity, my time will be. My show, I don't know, used to be on Wednesday mornings. Then I switched it to once a month, and now it's on third Sundays of the month, midnight to 2 a.m., which I thought, I had this romantic idea of like, yeah, it's gonna be great. It's late at night. I just can go play music. And when the time comes, I'm like, oh my god, I'm so tired. It's so late, but that's okay. It's weekend, so
Oh, I know. Physics is a major thing. I mean, after becoming a parent and becoming, working with my mom in that other capacity where I'm helping her and trying to maintain work and trying to maintain just day-to-day life, it's really challenging to carve out those times to do the things that you want to do. And I'm curious about one other thing that I wanted to talk about because of how DubLab has sort of served as this really one of the first online online radio stations that has evolved the way that it has, and where you guys were at that beginning process. What have you seen from the incredible digitization of all media from your vantage point, being where you are and kind of seeing the things that you've seen? You know, what has been the impact of the digitization of media? I mean, we've seen what it's done to the music industry in general, both bad and good. We've seen what it's done to terrestrial media, to television, to all of the different media channels in general. What is it that you see happening on the digital media front that's coming down the pipeline that you think is going to impact the future of what happens next?
yes. Well, there's always talks of some new disruptive technology, and that has been always the eternal kind of threat, right? Of everything becoming less human, more more algorithm driven, or whatever it is. But that has only been, I see it only as an opportunity to be more human than ever for radio stations. I think more than ever you have to be more human than ever. There's certain basic values that no matter what is thrown at you from the new technology world, uh, there's some basic rules as people that just don't change. We are social animals. We are people that are in need of other people, whatever. We're in need of human connection, right? So I kind of always stick to those things, those basic values we have as humans. I think the use of new technologies, whatever you call them, they always come with a promise to make something more efficient, to something more convenient, but in a way I'm in the business of making it more inconvenient. you know Meaning, like, let me not take you through this very predictable algorithm of the music you just want to hear. Let me throw you through a wild ride, and that's kind of the role of all of us cultural practitioners, to really uh, take you to new places, right? And I think technology is not very good at that. I think it's good at repeating or predicting from the past than creating new experiences. So I just I try to engage to a point that is necessary, but after that I kind of stick to some uh, you know traditional rules of us as social animals.
I think that's fantastic because that's always one of those things when you are a an online first media entity. I think the natural tendency, the gravity, is to go as automated as possible, and I think it's different from the vantage point of someone like Dublab, who's always really put a premium on the social engagement aspect. I mean, Dublab, it doesn't just live online; it lives in person. It lives in this engagement with people, and I think that if you bring some of that sensibility over to KCRW, then the media landscape of Los Angeles is in very capable hands, indeed. So, Ollie, thank you so very much for your time today. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. This has been Alejandro Cohen, who is the current executive director of DubLab. He is the incoming music director at KCRW. He is in a number of amazing projects. His solo record, his first solo record, surprisingly, on Geographic North Records,
No, so many
Chamber of
years.
Tears. Chamber of Tears is a fantastic. This is just my personal plug for you because Chamber of Tears is such an incredibly fantastic record. Thank you
Thank you.
for all the work. Thank you for your work at DubLab over the past 25 years. And I cannot wait to see what you do at KCRW.
Well, thank you so much, Steven, for having me, and I'm glad we made it happen. We've been emailing back and forth about this interview, so finally it
I
came at the right.
know.
Yeah.
we absolutely made it happen. And hey, I don't have a lot of homies on the west side over here in my own lonely chamber at the end of Sunset Boulevard. So
Sure.
I might have to hit you up for lunch when you're over here.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Ollie. I really appreciate it, and Godspeed in everything that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.